It's great to hear some very concrete suggestions in that discussion that we just heard there about how to strengthen defense and prepare for the future in Europe. Again, I encourage you to take a look at this if you haven't already. There are really some excellent ideas. Some of those that you just heard are in there as well. Now, we're running just a little bit behind in time, so we're going to try to catch up a bit now. Our next session is a panel discussion. Security of the Baltic Sea. There are at least 8 EU countries that are on the borders of the Baltic Sea. It's just right out there. I love the Baltic Sea. It bridges, of course, Northern and Central Europe, and that's what the focus of this next discussion is going to be, security on the Baltic Sea, bridging Central and Northern Europe. Your moderator is Minna, Ålander.
So, welcome everyone to this very topical panel on bridging northern and eastern flank. And we have here an excellent panel of experts and officials to tackle this question. And I would like to start with a brief remark about the role of Sweden, the newest NATO member. So I read with great interest this NATO Military Committee report from 1950, where it was described that in a contingency in Northern Europe, Sweden would be in a very central role for any NATO defense planning. And the report noted that it would be great to have Sweden on board sometime in the near future. So 74 years later, here we are. So first off, let me organize myself here a little bit. We will start with the Minister of Defense of Sweden, Jonson. I would like to just kick us off with hearing from you what's your sort of take on how the Finnish and Swedish membership has in NATO has transformed Baltic Sea security, and also if you have any kind of vision of how cooperation will work in the region now, or is there maybe even a chance for a division of labor?
Sure. Thank you very much, Minna, and once again, thank you for having me on stage. This is, of course, something that wouldn't have happened without Russia's full-scale invasion into Ukraine, and it's always I call it the mother of all unintended consequences, because if Russia had one object, it was to keep us out of NATO, and due to Russia's consequences, now we're in, and it opens up a lot of new capabilities for us to cooperate. I say we bring into the alliance, we bring in geography and capabilities. Geography, because we, as going to be an important staging and basing area, which is going to make it easier for NATO to deter and defend in the whole northern flank. It consolidates the flank. And of course, both with operational depth that we can provide and the assets and capabilities, which are important. So we are right now focusing very much on host nation support. We signed a defense cooperation agreement with the United States that went into power on the 15th of August, meaning that US have 17 sites of unpeded access in Sweden. Then, of course, they have 12 in Norway, 15 in Finland, and 4 in Denmark, and also in the Baltic states, which, of course, assures that the US can, for example, pre-position defense equipment there, and rotate in forces, which I think are very good. Before we were partners, and there is obviously a difference between partnership and membership. You can just ask our Ukrainian friends about that. But what we can do now when we are allies is that we can have all be based on NATO's common defense planning. Before we used to have very deep defense cooperation with Finland, which we are happy right now, because now we're working on the defense plans northwest, and we have a lot of use of the things we've been doing with Finland since before, but now we can all be based on the same kind of common operational planning, and that creates a lot of possibilities also to working much deeper when it comes to working on common force structure and reviewing our defense posture. And for Sweden, of course, this means that we have, fortunately now with probably don't have to fight the war on our own territory, but we have to, together with other partners, strengthen the frontier. Therefore, as you might know, we're contributing to FLF in Latvia with a reduced mechanized battalion starting from January. We're going to be doing air policing and contribution to NATO standing maritime forces. And in dialogue with Finland, we're going to be the framework nation for FLF in Finland as well, and building on all this Nordic cooperation that we had before, but now it's for real. I also used to, this is my final point now, be quiet, but I used to say that Nordic defense cooperation, there was a defense cooperation for peacetime situations, you know, and now we're all in and deepening our cooperation with Poland, Germany, and the Baltic states, the Nordics. It's strengthened the whole northern flank of the alliance. It's good for all the 32 allies that we're doing all these things.
Yes, as I said, like 74 years later, we finally get to make the plans. So, yeah, we in Finland certainly welcome you to fight on our territory. So that's great. Lieutenant General Piotr Błazeusz, you are the Commanding General of Eurocorps, and I would just like to hear, like now, like if you sort of like have your Polish general hat on this time. How do you view the like role of Poland in the defense of the wider Baltic Sea region? I would say, especially in light of the heavy investments that Poland is making into land force capabilities that are maybe more directed towards the defense of Eastern Europe. So, will Poland also find a role in the Baltic Sea?
Now I have the microphone. Well, we'll try first briefly remind everybody about the geostrategic picture of the Baltic Sea. The minister has mentioned some of the changes with the joining of Sweden. We all should remember that I think Mr. Putin underestimated the possibility that both Finland and Sweden will eventually decide and have the public support to be NATO members. So that's a great success to our side and a big failure on the Russian side. Now Sweden, the island of Gotland, very strategically positioned, that allows us for a better control of all the traffic on the Baltic Sea and air defense. You go down, you have the Danish Straits, which now with Sweden being on the other side, completely we can seal it off. And then going around the Kaliningrad region, that's the Polish challenge, not really a big problem. If it needs to be fixed, could be fixed. Going up, you have the Gulf of Finland. Absolutely now with Finland on the other side, in Estonia, very easily can be sealed off. Then you have the Ålander Islands, they're demilitarized, but in time of crisis or war, they can also be militarized and play an important role. So when you look at it from the Russian point of view, that's a very grim picture that probably causes a big concern for them. Now, a little bit about the Baltic Sea. Remember the two big challenges that we have to keep in mind. One is a lot of chemical weapons from World War II. The estimate is about 40,000 tons, something that when you think about any hybrid scenario could be used eventually. Hopefully it doesn't happen. Some of them are rusting and we all are concerned about it. Now, now what do we need, right? Well, definitely we all 8 of our countries with this one naughty neighbor, we need to have a great situational awareness. We need all sorts of ISR systems. We need the sensors to be able to track what the naughty neighbor is trying to do. And that is connected directly with the indications and warnings, as we call it, basically to be able to sense early enough that they are trying to prepare something naughty for us. We definitely need also the forces that we're able to deny the actions of the potential enemy, but also to fix it if necessary. But on the top of those issues, we definitely need the ability to protect the underwater critical infrastructure, huge network of all sorts of pipelines, of electrical cables, the fiber, meaning communications cables. And we've seen a lot of those incidents recently. We definitely need to get better of it. The challenge is, it is whole of the Baltic Sea region approach, not whole of government, not whole of country, but the whole Baltic Sea region, because a lot of those are private companies' infrastructure. So even we need to get better at mapping at some of them, making sure they are there, and also working closely with those private companies. On the top of it, obviously, legal issues. We are in peacetime. How we adjust our treaties, our laws to make for better protection of the underwater sea infrastructure, because right now Russians are taking advantage. The other point is ability, once we are able to prove that it was done by the Russians or by the proxies, as it was done in one case by this Hong Kong registered Chinese ship, then we need to have the ability to basically show that they've done it. Deny them this, what they always do, the deniability, because they always deny and say, show me the proof. So if we're able to prove it, then it will change a lot. And Poland now, and on the top of it, very honestly, we need to cooperate. There are a lot of formats for cooperation in the Baltic Sea region. We need to integrate. First, obviously, to be interoperable, but then eventually integrate, so that we can exchange information easily. We can share classified information. We do it, but I believe we can get even better at this. And obviously, we need everybody. We need the policymakers, we need the military, but we also need the industry and the private companies. Poland is trying to do as much as it can. First of all, you probably heard there is a decision, an agreement that the regional maritime component center will be stood up by Poland and Germany to basically be able to secure the Baltic Sea, but also basically be in command of the Combined Task Force, CTF, as we call it. So that's the first step that we are contributing to the C2. First, it will be Germany, and then it will turn Poland, and then we basically will rotate from there on. And we will have flag officers in both commands from both countries. On Friday, Finland announced that MICLIC, the multi-core land component command, will be established in Finland to cover the ground part in the northeast. We have purchased the Swedish SAB early warning aircraft, the AEW340, 2 of them. So this is to enhance also our situational awareness. We also signed the contract to get 2 surveillance ships, reconnaissance ships, some call it surveillance ship, also from Sweden. So we are doing everything we can to improve our own situational awareness. We have 1 naval strike missile squadron, basically battalion. We're in the process of buying the next one, because to fight on the sea, as Black Sea has shown, you don't need only the ships, submarines. You also need the capability to shoot the ships from the ground. We have ships equipped with the RBS-15. We still have the sub-program that's there on the horizon that, depending on the decisions, obviously, might go. But on the top of it, we all, or not all, a lot of our countries in the Baltic Sea region are getting F-35s. That will be a big game changer for all of us because of its multi-purpose role and ability to really collect a lot of data and in all the domains. And I will stop there. There's more to go. Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anna Wieslander, the director of or for Northern Europe at the Atlantic Council, based in Stockholm, Sweden. The general made it kind of sound like we might even be able to reverse this A2, the very much feared A280 bubble that Russia was supposed to have in the Baltic Sea, now maybe on Russia. So that's great news, I believe. But I wanted to ask you what you think about, based on what you just heard, and also when we widen the perspective a little bit beyond just the Baltic Sea, up in the Arctic as well, because I think what is really remarkable about the Finnish and Swedish NATO membership is this, that Sweden especially connects the whole region, from the Norwegian high north down to the southern Baltic Sea. So how do you view this new connecting link, and how, for example, Russian activity up at the Norwegian coast might affect the eastern flank, and how connected are these flanks now?
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me again here in Warsaw. It's great to be back. And yes, it's correct that they are interlinked, the Arctic and the Baltic Sea, and it's very important to be aware of that. I think when we think about Russia, we always need to take one step back and realize that Russia is not a local problem, whether it is in the Baltic Sea or the Arctic or the Black Sea. It's the same Russia. It's a Russia with an ambition to become a new pole in a multipolar system. That's the level of ambition that Russia has. And everything they do aims at affecting the international system to their favor. They want to change the status quo. They want to expand their political power. And as we see in Ukraine, they want to expand their territory. And it's the same Russia. And that's the level of the problem. It's not a local problem if you look at the Baltic Sea or the Arctic. And I think that's important to have with us because that's the magnitude of the threat. Now then, if we look at the Baltic Sea, I think in 2015, when NATO started to really look into the Baltic Sea region and kind of discovered, some countries had already warned against this, but that Russia had created kind of an anti-access area denial bubble, as it was called, over Kaliningrad. And the same actually is the logic for the Kola base up in the Arctic and the air base up there as well. And they are connected in a way militarily because there are flows going in between these bases from a Russian point of view, troops, material, etc. We see that all the time. But also in the way, of course, they will pursue any kind of operations, the weapon systems they pursue, and the logic with which they will conduct their warfare. So I think this is important to also when we talk about the Baltic Sea as a NATO lake or not. It has been disputed here in panels whether this is now a safe spot or not. We heard today the Swedish Chief of Navy saying that, well, we operate in the A2AD bubble every day when we are active in the Baltic Sea because it's already there. And I believe that when we see this, we also have to realize that, yes, I think that Russia is more squeezed, apparently. I mean, Sweden is now a NATO member. We have the longest coastline in the Baltic Sea. You have Finland joining as well. The Baltic Sea is still as important for Russia, not only militarily with Kaliningrad, but also with its commercial routes going there, gas and other supplies that are very important for Russia to be able to have this flow in the Baltic Sea. But then the Kola Peninsula, Kola Base, also becomes even more important because it's more of a safe place, and it contains the majority of its strategic nuclear assets when it comes to submarines and also airplanes. So, of course, in this big global game that Russia is conducting with those assets, it becomes even more important also. So we cannot only see at the Baltic Sea without also as has been pointed out here, having the intel, having the surveillance on what's going on in both those places, being able to digest that information together in order to be also on top of things and actually be able to conduct that deterrence by denial that we are now striving to achieve.
Great point. Thanks for bringing that in, Anna, on the importance of the Kola Peninsula and the bastion defense, which goes even further than the Baltic A2AD bubble, I would say. Linas Linkevičius, you're currently the ambassador of Lithuania to Sweden, but you have had several minister roles in Lithuania previously. Among those, Minister of Foreign Affairs and I believe Minister of Defense 2 times. So I would like to hear from you. What is your view at the moment on this Nordic-Baltic cooperation that, for example, Sweden has been really putting on the agenda quite a lot in the so-called NB8 framework, and where do you see that dynamic going and the potential of this format?
Thank you very much. Now it's obviously upgraded, raised to the different quality and level. And after accession of Finland, Sweden is definitely a new opening. And also very vivid proof that the plan of Putin is working. What we were it was hard to convince our neighbors, Finns and Swedes, to join NATO, but Putin made it. And that was definitely quite decisive, also with regard to our security in Baltic states. And I will mention many reasons, but we also not just experts, they know a terminology like Suwalki Gap, for instance, which still exists, and it's not disappeared. But after Baltic Sea became inner lake of NATO, this opening opportunities for reinforcement, for deployment, for backup, and basically now it's a problem, militarily speaking, problem for Kaliningrad, not for us. We also have these challenges, so it's nothing to celebrate, but definitely it's change of the core. Also, secondly, I would like to say it started not from the empty sheet. I'm always, when discussing the security and role of Sweden and Finland, and say Sweden more than 200 years was neutral, I'm always correcting Sweden was non-allied. And not neutral would be too much, you know. They had always very active position and stance, and it was not just statements. And when I was first time appointed as defense minister in '93, I found a hotline with Sweden in case of emergency. So I learned, it was first lesson for me to know how Sweden is neutral. So it's also important to note. Also, some of you probably remember so famous Baltic cooperation projects like BOLT-BAT, BOLT-NET, BOLT-TRON. It's Army cooperation, Navy cooperation, airspace control, Baltic Defense College still alive, he's in Estonia. So it started in the very close and active participation of Nordic countries. There was also division of assistance. Swedes were helping Latvia more, Estonians held by Finland. We had more maybe assistance from Denmark. But that was nice cooperation, and I would say it was model of multilateral cooperation invented, because we, three countries as a recipients, were coordinating ourselves, our needs, our priorities, which, believe me, in the early 90s was not easy. It's even now difficult to agree what we have to purchase as military equipment, armament, and whatever. It's better to do that jointly, but it's not always easy to do. At that time, it was even more difficult, but we understood that it's even not enough because donors must be coordinated. And then all these formats were established. Now we are, as I said, in new level and new opportunities, and more to say, this is also what I'm trying to always think, that when we're asking something from our allies, we should think about their interests as well. Otherwise, it will not work. But in this regard, I believe I will be honest, and I hope you will agree with me, what Finland and Sweden doing for Baltic region, they're doing for themselves as well, for Sweden and for Finland, not just for Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. So this is very important to note. And now, after we are in NATO, and some decisions of NATO are also done with regard to enhanced forward presence, and it's good that Sweden dispatching a battalion as a part of CFP to Latvia to give Danes in rotation. But that's very, very strong, so to say, message, and also very concrete, practical move. Also, we expect in the future, and that was not denied and even confirmed by political statements also by the minister, that air policing in the future also could be more actively engaged. I would wish, when we're talking about capabilities gaps, to mention air defense, which was always a problem. And there's also a decision in NATO to have this rotational model of air defense. So to expect that these countries could deliver armed forces, which is not donation, it's for temporary deployment, as it was done previously by some other countries. So rotational model of air defense, also something what could be filled with the concrete substance and by our neighbors and countries. So we have really very good opportunities. And also in cooperation with hybrid threats. Baltic states were always on the front line. And not by accident, we have centers of excellence dealing with these issues, NATO centers of excellence, energy security in Vilnius, strategic communication in Riga, cyber security in Tallinn, or in Helsinki, this hybrid center, also very good close cooperation between NATO and EU. So my final point would be, I hope that we will contribute to the cohesion interaction between NATO and European Union, which was always the challenge, not to waste resources, not to duplicate with regard to the expenses, capabilities, because 2% of GDP, as President Duda yesterday said, really not enough, should be more if we would like to fill with the substance those decisions we made about defense plans, regional plans. It's not enough. But also, it's not just amount of money important, but output efficiency, not to duplicate each other, to fill gaps we have in the alliance, and also not to have this competition between EU and NATO. I believe, and I really convinced that Nordic Baltic countries capable to make this and to show the model of cooperation in this regard.
That would be
two-finger, quick one. On the geostrategic picture, thank you for mentioning the Kola Peninsula. Ladies and gentlemen, the only ground lines of communications to Kola Peninsula during Korean period is one Russian highway and one Russian railway, Kirillov, I believe, called, and it runs 100 kilometers from the border of Sweden. That's the only connection.
Finland.
I'm sorry, Finland, my bad. Yeah.
Indeed, we are very aware of this. So I would like to open the floor now for questions from the audience. So please keep it kind of to the point because we only have 10 more minutes left. I see a question here in the back. Yes.
Thank you. Stephen McKelvey, Kennesaw State University. I would like to ask if you could give us any details about the new multinational battle group being established in Finland. And you noted that Sweden is taking the framework role. So anything you could comment on that would be appreciated. Thank you.
All right, we can take another question if there is one. Yes, you're in the front row.
In the panel earlier on the Baltic states, there was an intriguing suggestion that the Council of Baltic Sea States, which was long dismissed as one of the most pointless organizations in Europe, if not the world, might be finding a new lease of life as the place to deal with hybrid threats and critical national infrastructure. I just wondered if anyone on the panel had any thoughts about the CBSS, and if it doesn't have that role, perhaps it's time to put it to bed.
All right, maybe we take these two questions first. Paul Jonson, would you like to comment on the first question?
Sure. Even though it's at early stages, of course, we have been having a dialogue with Finland, and let me be clear, this is not a traditional FLF concept like we have in the Baltic state and Poland, so forth. So it would be based on most likely on staff officers and increased exercises, but the possibility of also having pre-position of defense equipment. It would be that Sweden then would be the 9th ally within the alliance who has a framework responsibility. It would build upon the quite deep and extensive Swedish-Finnish defense cooperation that we've had before we joined the alliance, where we did have operational planning going from peacetime crisis and wartime situations. And of course, we would welcome other countries also to engage into it. We did have a great exercise, I think, with Nordic Response in March this year as well. So it would certainly be inspired by a lot of things that we've been doing in the regions. But once again, this is the early stages. This is going to be transformed into a report, of course, to the military committee, and then we see, of course, then the defense ministers, of course, have to endorse the concept. But we're glad that Finland asked, and we think it's natural because we have such a deep collaboration since before.
Ambassador, would you like to comment on this?
Briefly on Edward's question, I partially will respond to this. We have so many formats, if you agree, so many organizations, sometimes maybe too many, those who producing something, some added value. And now I just talked about Nordic Baltic, which is really becoming a brand. It's something which is becoming stronger, integrated, by all means, on all levels, including not just strategic, but also a very practical level. And also we have one more format, being in Warsaw, I'd like to mention, it's Weimar, which is now reburning, and it was a bit at dormant, so to say, this situation. But now, after some changes, this is again becoming quite important vehicle. So synergy between these two, Nordic Baltic and Weimar, could be a strong power. Also including security in my view, and that's up to the leaders to use it.
Very briefly, I would say any format that brings tangible results would be welcome, and obviously the cooperation, because as mentioned here, one of my colleagues here in the panel, I mean, we have a lot of panels on cooperation. From my perspective, we also, as members of the European Union, probably should take another look at the European Union Baltic Sea region strategy, because it does not have really the defense or resilience dimension. It has only saved the sea, connect the region, increase the prosperity. So maybe each time we revise it and also include this resilience / defense dimension as well there. Thank you.
Anna, want to comment on?
Yeah, can I comment on that? I think when we build now, everything has a sense of urgency in this region. I mean, this is a contested region where we feel the threat all the time. So we have the military building block, which we have sketched upon here. We have resilience, which we have touched upon, but where we should do much more and should be much more worried. Not that we don't have resilient societies, I think we have, but the level of the threat from Russia, combined with other actors like China, Iran, really puts stress on us. And then the third are these political formats, and the Council of Baltic Sea States. I think Russia left, and that has kind of revitalized the discussion on how can you use it. Now, I think what's always important here, and what's lacking sometimes, is the agenda setting. You can't just meet and say that we're doing something. We need to push things from this region. We need to push others to understand the long-term threat from Russia, for instance, the need to support Ukraine, the need to counter hybrid threats, the need to build deterrence. And I think that's what's missing sometimes, just not be happy with the forums, but fill them with an agenda that we then, like water, rings on the water, spread and push in other forums as well. We are needed. I think the voices from this region are needed in the broader sense. I know we're out there, but I think we could do even more.
Minister, you want to...
Yeah, very briefly, but just to reinforce what the General said, I like activities, but I like even more accomplishments. We have a lot of forums right now, which were shaped in another era. We have the Northern Group, we have the JEF, we have the Nordefco meeting, we have the NB8, we have, of course, the EU ministerials. We meet a lot, and that's great to have a dialogue and building common awareness. But let's just make sure we actually get output of those meetings. I think it is very important, because as a defense minister, you end up traveling quite a lot. And what makes a difference is to get laws adopted by the get the budgets passed by and so forth. So let's not forget the core business.
More results, less process, perhaps. We have time for one more question here at the end.
Thank you. Charles Clark from the Baltic Geopolitics Programme at the University of Cambridge. My question is about the point the Minister just made a moment ago, the Joint Expeditionary Force. I'd welcome any comments that you have about how it operates, its membership, its coordination with the other organisations we've talked about.
Now I will have to restrict the panel a little bit. Would you like to comment on that, General?
I think this is a great UK initiative that coordinates and tries to instill this culture of deployability. Again, another format, but I always say that just like with the previous comments on all the formats, we need to try to squeeze it or make it of the bigger format. So this is one of the elements to achieve what we want to achieve. So I support it. Poland is not member of the JEF yet, but I know this is bringing some tangible results. But it's always the challenge is about getting units and countries to sign up and be able to react. One last point, not connected to the question. With the situational awareness for the Baltic Sea, we also need to closely observe what's happening at this, I think it's called Ålänga Guba, where there is the Russian Gugi. This is the underwater research, it's called Underwater, Russian Main Directorate for Deep Underwater Research. Well, those are the people that have means and capabilities and plans to actually fool or play around with our underwater infrastructure. So even though they are near the Barents Sea, we need to really keep a close eye. There is this infamous, one of the reconnaissance ship, Yantar, that has been all around the world spying and collecting information, mapping whatever is underwater.
Important connection again between the flanks. So now to the rest of the panel, you have about 15 seconds for any last remarks as JEF nations representatives or else.
Very briefly on the JEF, it's important for us to have the United Kingdom continuously engaged also in Northern Europe. We welcome, of course, their framework responsibility in Estonia. The JEF is important under Article 10, under Article 5. Now all the JEF countries right now are also NATO allies. We have good and substantive discussions, everything ranging from defense capabilities also to hybrid threats, and has a strong naval and maritime dimension. We activated similar to the vigilance activities that NATO undertook as well. We foresee the JEF being something that could sometimes act a little bit quicker than NATO because the constellation is quite agile and so forth. So it's a security provider into our region.
Great. Ambassador, any last remarks?
If 15 seconds, I believe in this region, we have excellent opportunities to become a model of European Union and NATO cohesion, cooperation, and delivery. And it's not just meeting, as the Minister said, but also delivering some results and some added value.
Excellent. I hope to see more of that. Anna, you have the last word.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think on the JEF, just that fact that Sweden and Finland are in NATO now, how can the JEF be used in a more severe situation that we have to actually think that through is important. And then I think there are a range of concrete measures we can take, and I would especially emphasize the hybrid sphere in this. I really oppose the term hybrid activities. I think we should all call it hybrid warfare. That's what it is. It's been ongoing for a decade, and we really need to step up in this field as well.
Indeed. Thank you so much.
Six words.
Oh, okay.
NATO, EU, harmony and complementary in the Baltic Sea region. Thank you.
Perfect. Couldn't have done it better myself. Thank you very much, the excellent panel. I wish we had like about 4 hours more, but alas, so thank you.